everyone. Welcome to Telling Tall Tales the Right Way. I'm your host, Heather Asianbi. I am now an author myself, but I'm also the editor of several adult nonfiction bestsellers, and I am a certified master storyteller. I'm also an editor, a reporter, and a writer all on my own too. So I know a thing or two about amazing stories. And what we're going to talk about today is how the elements of every great story apply to Where the Line Bleeds by Jesmyn Ward. Now, this was her debut album. Good Lord. Her debut novel. She has written, I believe, 3 or 4 since this one, and I believe I've read all of them. So we're going to talk about that today. So welcome. Okay, so what is this book about? Let's talk about the what of it all. What is happening? Joshua and Christophe are twins who are in their senior year of high school down in the fictional town of Beau Sauvage, Mississippi, which is a Gulf Shores locale. It should be noted that Jesmyn Ward is, first of all, she's won a ton of prizes for her writing because she's brilliant. Number 2, she's also a professor of creative writing. Let me check her bio. Oh, she is an associate professor of creative writing at Tulane University. There we go. So she knows her stuff. And she is brilliant. I think I said that already. Anyway, Beau Sauvage is a fictional town written by Jesmyn Ward. And so Beau Sauvage. So they're seniors in high school who are getting ready to graduate, and then they have to figure out like what they're going to do. They are being raised by their blind grandmother because their mom just kind of took off, and their dad is like the local ne'er-do-well who is probably a petty criminal. He is definitely drug addicted. And so the boys are they're very protective of their blind grandmother, but she's also not super much of a parent. Anyway, this takes place over a single summer. And what I will say about it is that, you know how like when you're watching something on TV, a movie, or just even a TV show, and the visual of it creates like the feeling of what it would be like if you were standing there. Jesmyn Ward she's so good at making that happen. So it's almost like, you can feel the humidity that settles into this community as like the summer gets going, how it's oppressive. But then again, where they live, they are oppressed, right? So those are companion themes, not just the temperature and the barometric pressure, but how they live their lives, right? The boys don't really have a direction. Neither one of them was particularly adept at sports, so they're not getting like athletic scholarships to go to college. Their grades are middling at best, so they're not getting academic scholarships. They both really, really, really like to smoke weed, which, so what, right? Who cares? But it plays into kind of how they use it to, I wouldn't say handle their lives or like deal with their lives, but it definitely speaks more to their muting. I'd say that they get high to mute some of the realities of their life and to maybe round off some of their sharp corners. So why is all this important? Okay, Where the Line Bleeds. First of all, look at this cover. Isn't it? It's beautiful, right? The trees, but the outlines of the twins. I mean, I think this is just fantastic. So I'm just going to read you the back. Okay, this is the back. Okay, Joshua and Christophe are twins raised by their blind grandmother in rural Beau Sauvage in Mississippi's Gulf Coast. Over the course of a single life-changing summer, as they struggle to find work and contend with the reappearance of their parents, Seal, who left town for a better job. And let me just stop right there. Steele does make an appearance throughout the book, but mostly she is an extreme peripheral character. And when she does show up, it's not like she's like, oh my God, my boys, I can't believe that, I left you all this time. She's pretty unapologetic about it, which I wish that we had had a little bit more exploration into how that colors how the boys deal with these young women that they're interested in. But in a way, it does inform their attitude about how they look at certain girls, like girls that in their mind kind of remind them of their mom, and how they're very dismissive of them, right? I'll just say that. Anyway, and Sandman, who is the aforementioned addict. The brothers are forced into a series of decisions that will ultimately damn or save them both, right? Okay. While I don't disagree with that description, what I do see is young men who feel like they don't really have a lot of choices. And so the big employer in town is located down on the docks. And one of the twins gets hired. I don't want to give like too much away, because if you read this book, you're going to like, these details are germane, but I mean, I know that this whole show is about spoilers because I give everything away typically, but here's the thing. I don't necessarily want to give too much of this away, because the type of work that's being done there plays really heavily into the story. Okay, so both twins apply. One gets hired, the other one does not. The one who does not turns to drug dealing because he needs to make money. They need to help their grandmother. She has a very tight budget, even though their mom sends money from whatever city she lives in, doing whatever job it is that's more important than raising her kids. I say that with judgment, don't I? I don't necessarily mean it with judgment. And I understand, like, I've never been a single mom. I was a married single mom, which has its own set of challenges, but I also had a second income, right? To help, I had my income and their dad's income under the same roof. So like my financial situation is much different than Seal's, right? And I get that. I guess as a mom myself, I don't understand how you just go away and abandon your kids and then hope and pray that their dad, who is described on the back of this book as a dangerous addict, doesn't come into their lives in any type of detrimental way, or frankly into their lives at all, because of, he's a dangerous addict. Okay. All right. So one brother gets hired, one brother turns to drug dealing. Now, we know that their father is a dangerous addict, which means he has ties to local drug dealing, right? There are a bunch of things that go on and go wrong and all of this sort of thing. But what I will say is that overwhelmingly, there's a through line of foreboding. Like, it starts out innocently enough. I mean, not innocently, because this is not light reading. Okay. I'm just letting you know, like, if you think this is going to be some cozy little book you curl up with on a cloudy afternoon or a winter day, like that is not happening. But anyway, okay. There is a sense of foreboding that comes through from the very first page. And you're like, okay, take a deep breath. We're in for it. Okay. And it doesn't let up, so that when the big climactic act finally occurs, it almost feels like you've been holding your breath and now you can let it out. So how does Jesmyn set this up? Really, she kind of tries to tell just like the day-to-day of what these boys go through, right? They wake up, they're trying to adjust to their new life, they're going to graduation, they've got their cap and gown, it's a bunch of different things. They've got girls that they're interested in, they've got their friends that they hang out with. They're, again, trying to figure out, like, what's my path as an adult? Which way am I going? And so that's why they both turn to the only primary employer in town, because they're like, well, and they even talk about it in the car. If even one of us gets hired, that's great for the family, right? Because that helps relieve the financial pressure off of our grandmother. That helps put a little money in our pockets so that we can like put gas in our car and go have a good time with our friends and hit up that girl that we really like. And even though they really do, as I believe is probably how every other young man is at this time of their lives, they do really try to project this image of strength and confidence, when on the inside, they're really just little boys who want reassurance and direction and somewhere soft to land. But if you've read any Jesmyn Ward books, you know that doesn't really exist in her stories. Soft places to land are not the primary thing here. But what does speak very loud and very clearly is the bond between the twins. Now, they are fraternal twins. I believe they're fraternal. I should probably have known that before I hit record on this, right? I believe they're fraternal. So they're easily told apart, right? Like, you're not going to mistake one in a location for the other. Like, that doesn't happen. But it really speaks to the bond that they share, and they have that twin connection where if one feels something, the other one feels it. And, if one's thinking something, the other one can pick up on it pretty easily. It is really, it's a beautiful story. So, okay. So how does this progress? Well, I've kind of so I was going to go through the who, what, where, when, and why of it all, but honestly, let's just stick with the three primary components. So characters, character development, character definitions. They're so sharply drawn that you never mistake Christophe for Joshua or vice versa. You know exactly who it is, even if the way the author writes the book, it's not very clear, but you know immediately who is who. Their mom is also very sharply drawn. And even though obviously I clearly have a little bit of criticism for her, she is written in a way that does make you feel for her. She's not a one-dimensional character. She is a woman who was at a critical juncture of her life. She had twins. She knew she couldn't take care of them, not in that town. Where was she going to work? And so she moved to a city. And again, I should know the city, but I do not. I'll put it in the show notes, so for sure. She moves to the city so that she can get a more like professional job and make something a little bit more of herself and then send money home. But this is where a lot of parents who are not physically present in their children's lives a lot make the mistake, right? Is they think that just providing financially is all the kids really require. And of course, we all know differently. Kids want their parents. They want their parents' love. They want their parents' attention. They want to know that their parents are there to provide that soft space to land. Joshua and Christophe don't have that from either parent, right? Because again, Sandman is doing street things, right? He is not involved in his boy's life. Although we do learn later that he has kept tabs on them. And one of the boys who does become the drug dealer has fleeting interactions with him. And then the brother who's working is like, yo, like, what are you doing? You can't do that. Like, we have to be super careful not to be around him because, first of all, he hasn't been in our lives. What has he ever done for us? Nothing. Number two, do we really want to get mixed up in like this crazy addict, even if he is like our sperm donor guy? They never use that language. That's just me paraphrasing. But anyway, what I also, so those are the characters. Even Grandma is so well drawn. Like, we learn so much about her through really pared down language. We can imagine the struggles that she's endured, not just to have her kids, but to raise them, to be a blind Black woman in Southern Mississippi, even in the 21st century. That's not a picnic. That's not a picnic. And then you have Joshua and Christophe. Again, you can tell which one is which just by the way that Jesmyn Ward writes them. But they are an interesting balance of hope and hopelessness. They have this youthful optimism where everything's going to turn out okay. We just have to do this, that, or the other thing. Everything's going to turn out okay. And then on the other hand, they're like, my God, we live in this dead end backwater place that America has kind of forgotten about. Nobody cares about us down here. And what am I actually going to be doing with my life, right? And that's heartbreaking. It's really, really heartbreaking. Okay, so on to the world building. What kind of world do they live in? Well, it's modern world, right? Cell phones, planes, trains, and automobiles, shipping and utilities and all these things come into play when we are in this town with these boys. And we can almost, again, like I told, like you can feel the heaviness of the humidity there. When the breeze comes, you can almost imagine like you're sweating and it's hot. It's really hot. And then a breeze comes and just cools you for a hot second, right? We also get a pretty good description of how they feel and what they think when they're high. So, about the homes that they visit, the people that they hang around with, the town itself. It's, even if some of it is not as robustly described in the pages of the book, you can fill in with your imagination what the downtown street must look like, maybe with its angled parking for cars to park in front of the hardware store or the bakery or whatever, right? Like you can almost picture it. You can hear the Southern accents down there. You can almost picture how people are dressing because it's so hot, depending on the character, right? So the author does an exceptional job of drawing this world. And it starts with the first page of the prologue. And it says, the river was young and small. At its start, it seeped from the red clay earth in the piney woods of southern Mississippi, and then wound its way, brown and slow, over a bed of tiny gray and ochre pebbles through the pines. And then it goes on to describe, that's how, it opens because now Joshua and Christophe are preparing to jump into this river. Anyway, but when you hear that description, you can understand the rich world that Jesmyn Ward has created here. And then let's talk about the primary conflict and resolution. The conflict is from the very beginning of the book, the story. That their father, their bio dad, is going to make an entrance in some way, and he does, and it is explosive. But before we get to that point, the tension starts here, kind of high, right? If this is at the bottom of the screen is the ground on which we're starting from for tension, it starts here. And then it just goes up, right? You can't see my hand anymore because that's where the tension goes. And it's a gradual trajectory of tension. And yet it's also a through line of foreboding. I don't know if that makes sense, but you find yourself if you're sitting in a chair and you're reading, you're slowly scooting to the edge of your chair, right? You're like, you've got the book and you're like, okay, right? That's how it goes. And so what finally happens, and it's not told in a straightforward manner where this point leads to this point, leads to that point, leads to this point, leads to that point. That's not how it goes. It's a little murky how Sandman, their dad, ends up almost killing one of the boys. He cuts him during like a physical altercation, not shooting, not anything, but like cuts him, and he almost kills him. And so once this ball that we've been slowly traveling towards through the book explodes, you're like, okay, it happened. That's not the resolution, though. The conflict is that you knew it was coming. That's not the resolution. The resolution is that the boys become even more of a united unit, that's redundant, but more of a solid unit, we'll say. And Sandman is taken care of by various other nefarious people. So the resolution is, it's almost difficult to describe, because while we have this fight and one of the brothers gets critically injured, the resolution that comes after is a reaffirmation of the brothers' bond and love for each other and their unwavering, undying support for each other through thick and thin, no matter what. It also, I think, speaks to a larger issue of how are we raising our young people? If we're really serious about seeing a change in the world as we currently experience it, what are we doing with our young people to make sure that happens, right? Like, to me, that speaks a lot. That seems to be a lot of what Jesmyn Ward's books are about, is we have people in our society who are just kind of forgotten. Like, we don't, we might count them in a census, but they're not considered vital and important members of our, either the local community, the regional community, or even nationally and globally a part of the human family. And I wonder the way that she shines a light on how we're born into certain situations through no fault of our own, whether it's privileged or not, or through no part of our credit, rather, if it's a privileged situation, or we don't get credit for that because we didn't do anything to earn it. It's just, it can shape the decisions that you make when you don't know any better or any other way of life. So you follow the examples that are around you. And if you don't see anybody doing better, how can then you also follow an example to do better, if that makes sense? What I will say is that so 4 books. Wait, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 4 fiction books she wrote. So this was her first one. And then I believe it was followed by Sing Unburied Sing, which, oh my God. Okay, I gave that book to the aunt of a friend of mine, so I don't have it here in the house anymore. That that story wrecked me. Like, those characters stayed with me long after I turned the last page. So please do read that one. The other one is Salvage the Bones, which takes place over the course, I believe, of like 2 weeks. The 2 weeks leading up to Hurricane Katrina in 2005, also down in southern Mississippi on the Gulf Shores. And it is harrowing. Not the part about the hurricane is actually, again, takes up very little room in the book. But everything up to that point, again, a sense of foreboding, and then an explosion followed by the resolution. Jesmyn Ward is one of the best writers of our time. Every book, go out and get every book, read them all. I wouldn't recommend that you read them all one at a time, like boom, 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 read them, because that's a lot of emotional upheaval. I first read, which one did I read first? Sing Unburied Sing was my introduction to her. Then I read Salvage the Bones, probably like, I don't know, maybe a year later. And then I read this one. Her most recent book is called Now We Descend. And it is a story of an enslaved woman who is taken, I believe, from one of the Carolinas, maybe, and taken down to New Orleans, and it tells the story of her escape. Also, breathtakingly gorgeous and heartrending. So those are the 4 books. I cannot recommend this author enough. Please go read her. I mean, she's outstanding. Truly, truly, truly outstanding. And so, okay, so that's where the line bleeds. And I would love to hear your comments or read your comments. So if you have read any Jesmyn Ward books, or if you can recommend some other books to me, I will read them. You know, I love to read. I love to read and watch TV. There we go. Those are my 2 things. Okay. So thank you for joining me on Telling Tall Tales the Right Way. I look forward to seeing you next time. I'll see you later. Bye.